I just remember turning to my husband going, I think I can give birth in the woods. He was like, oh, really? And I'm like, one day I'm just not going to be here and I'll be in the woods and I'll come back with the baby. I was so ill mentally. Like, I don't mind saying that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes she would wake up and I couldn't. I was gone and I would just like have to go and scream into a pillow. And I was like, Santa's going to wake the baby. And I couldn't. I was like, it can't. I spent an hour and 45 minutes. And my husband was like, where are you going? And he said, I just left. I went running out into the street in my pajamas and just stood in front of Santa Claus. Like Gandalf, that you shall not pass.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. I am so excited today. So one of the jobs I have is I'm an author and I absolutely love sitting down, writing, creating worlds. One of my biggest perks as an author is being sent other people's books. And I've got the author of a certain book on today. And I have to tell you, so the book is called So Thrilled for You. And I started reading it and I read half of it in a day. And I posted that I was reading it and loving it. And then I finished it the following day. And it took me on such a journey that I wanted to actually read you what I wrote about this book. So I posted a picture of the book and I wrote, flippin' heck. I posted that I was halfway through this book yesterday and already obsessed with it. Well, I've just finished. I sobbed. I felt so distant from the four women in this book at parts and then so close it was as though they had me gripped by the throat. Judgment, shame, pressure, paranoia. This book talks about female friendship, womanhood and motherhood in such a raw and truthful way you simply couldn't do with non-fiction. Not to this depth of feeling, but I truly believe this work will speak to so many women feeling lost out of their depth and questioning everything, including their existence. God, it makes me feel emotional just saying that. Right. This is a look at how far we are pushed, how much is expected of us, and how important it is to remove all the shit layered against us so we can just talk and be. Honestly, order it now. Massive love to you, the author. What a fucking masterpiece. She's a mother of one. She's an author of flipping brilliant books. It's Holly Bourne!
You're being so nice.
I think I've gone straight in. I didn't do the soft hello and welcome. I've just gone, Holly!
I just have that meme in my head when they say, you know, when everyone's singing happy birthday to you and you don't know what to do with your face. That's just like what I've just been like being really lovely.
I've just gone all in and I probably should have been nice and gentle and kind of just nice and warm and welcome.
No, thank you.
And then gone into that.
Thank you, because this book, writing it was just such a raw, kind of insane experience, and I just remember just keep going.
Really?
I was so scared to write any of it, and I was like, no, just keep going. So to hear you say that, someone that I respect so much, like professionally, it's just it's a relief that the book seems to be having the response that I hoped it would have, which is to just have anyone who reads it feel just radical amounts of empathy for all women, regardless of what their relationship with motherhood is, whether you're a new mum who's really struggling, a woman who might be really struggling to have a baby no matter how desperate they are, somebody who's like child-free and happy about it but feels like everyone's like, are you sure? Are you sure? I wanted everyone to feel seen and to just completely get that
where
side
the
of
other
the story.
person is coming from. Yeah.
So it was,
and also what we show, what we might be feeling inside, but actually what we put out there are two very different things. And for each of the characters, the inner, what they're feeling inside is so vastly different to actually what they're portraying. And so much of that is female friendship and kind of that feeling of you have to support, you have to show up in a certain way and not wanting to make the other person feel judged or pressured or, you know, it's all so nuanced and complex, I think, female friendship. And it always is, but then chuck children into the mix and it's a whole other thing. You're all relearning what that friendship is and who that person is because you're relearning who you are.
Yeah, and I've written so much about female friendship, and so I write books for teenagers and books for adults, and female friendship seems to have been like one of the main links through it. And with this book, I wanted to explore what is it about motherhood and parenting that means that women just suddenly aren't able to talk to each other the way that we're able to talk and connect with any other topic. You know, you can hold back their hair when they're being sick in the nightclub and you can be there when they introduce you to their boyfriend, for their new boyfriend, and they're 23 and you're like, oh dear God. And you can just see the whole toxic relationship play out and there's nothing you can do, but you're there for them and you talk it through and you have empathy, you have understanding, you meet each other and you talk about it and you're like, oh, I know I'm being ridiculous, I know I shouldn't go back to him, but I'm going to anyway. And you're honest. I think women are really honest with each other in their friendship, and that's why it's so important. And female friendship is so important. And then you get to the age where people start having kids and it just feels to me that it just gets so factional and those conversations kind of stop or stutter or halter, and everybody might be too scared to say something because they don't want to upset someone. It can come from really good places, or people feel judged, or people can't even articulate how they're feeling. And I feel it's like when we need to hold on to each other the most, it's a massive life-changing thing that happens to us. It's so normal to have kids. Yeah. And yet it's so huge and seismic when it happens to you or for people around you. It does seem to change everything more than a toxic boyfriend.
But if we look at how we live now compared to how we would have lived, centuries ago, it's very different. We're so isolated now, and we're all so driven in our own individual paths. It's not a collective. It's not about the village. It's not about the community. So you do have, it is very, fractured, I guess, in that way. So you're not doing it how we used to do, where, someone could hear your baby cry and come to you and help you. You know what I mean? It is very much like behind closed doors, trying to just do the best we can and often feeling like we're totally failing.
Yes, and there's like this weird juxtaposition of, because obviously most mums are online, and I think we do tend to reach for the social media as a sort of desperate way of connecting to the world, where you're like breastfeeding in the night, or just like, what's the world happening? And there's this weird juxtaposition of people going, we shouldn't be parenting like this, be kind to yourself, we should have a village, all the things that you say, and you're like, yes, this is why I'm finding it so hard. And then you'll also have mums who look like thinner than they ever were before they had a baby, in these pristine houses with these beautifully dressed children, like
everyone
eating the perfect sweet potato croquette that you handmade for them. And you just feel like absolutely terrible. And you must, like, they're not having a tantrum on the floor of Sainsbury's, and they seem to be completely nailing it without the village.
Not
and
even
you're
just
like,
functioning, excelling.
Yeah. Yes. Whereas it's just, and you're like looking at yourself covered in breast milk. Yeah. And your husband's like, you do realise it's been 12 times since you cried since 7 a.m. Do we need to go to the doctor, love? And you tried to make a sweet potato croquette and it got chucked across the floor and then you cried, and and a cat eats it and you're worried you have to take the cat to the vet. It's just like that. You're like, what is? It's so confusing because you're like, I'm finding it really hard, and I look at the internet and tell me of course I'm finding it hard, but then everyone else is going, it's so hard, but like I have a full face of makeup on and I'm also doing my job, and I know that's not the reality behind the scenes. But it's that thing, isn't it? You know that about social media. No, everyone's got complicated inner lives and everyone's struggling and everyone's struggling.
But it's all about what people want to show as well, right? So I don't feel like people should feel like they have to show everything. For me, it felt like a massive relief when I started sharing, when I started caveating things and started going, but this is what it's like now, but to get us here, or, showing those bits of honesty and rawness. Not that I ever didn't, but I remember just feeling like having those comments from people going, that's me, just made me go, do you know what I mean? So we're not all in white, crisp sheets and smiling all the time at cameras. It's kind of, motherhood isn't that.
No, I can't remember the last time my clothes saw the inside of my drawers.
It's enough that they're washed.
Like, they come off the hanger, back on the body, into the pile on the ground, into the washer, back on the hanger. Like, if I put my clothes in my drawers, I'd be like, what is this space? Like, we don't need drawers. I should just, like, free up some space in our bedrooms because we just can't use them.
No. Talk to me about the book and the characters in the book. Because obviously, so it starts, for anyone that maybe hasn't read the blurb, it starts at a baby shower and it's all on fire, basically.
Yeah, it's a whodunit about somebody committing arson at a baby shower. And it's like set on the hottest day of the year, and it's like the world's worst, most kind of gauche, over-the-top baby shower. Yeah. And it's these 4 women who have been best friends since university, and they are the 4 main suspects of okay, who set fire to the vagina pinata? Or vulva pinata, if I'm going to be anatomically correct. And so you have Nikki, whose baby shower it is. But she is a woman who has sort of got pregnant with the wrong person.
Stumbled into it.
Because she's so desperate to have a baby.
Yeah.
So she's just like, I don't think this is right, but I'm so desperate to have a baby, I'm going to try and force this nail in the hole. And she's now like confronting the reality of what she's done to herself.
Yeah.
Then there's Lauren, who is quite newly postpartum, who's got a baby, Woody, who just will not sleep. And she's just completely unraveling.
Yeah.
And she's just like, the fact that she even has to get to this baby shower, it's just, she's like, I can't, but I have to, because then my friends are going to hate me if I don't come.
Yeah.
Then you've got Charlotte, who's thrown the baby shower to try and show how just fine she is, that all her friends are managing to get pregnant really easily, and she's been desperately trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
And is really struggling with her fertility, and is just trying to just kind of cope using like toxic positivity for her friends. And then the final character is Steffi, character/suspect, who is child-free, absolutely nailing it in every other part of her life, but feels like everyone's like, yeah, but you don't have kids. And it's just sort of the tensions of that day kind of all come to a head. And yeah, it just kind of explores, as I said, how motherhood can really fracture female friendships and make us not have empathy for each other, or to judge each other, or because we're trying to not judge ourselves, and how we do just need to hang on to each other and have space for each other and empathy for each other, but just how painful and hard that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I feel like with each character, especially Lauren, actually, that knowing what that new motherhood is like, and that feeling of that life changing so much overnight and it not being how you thought it would be. Honestly, Holly, I just think it's an incredible book. And I don't think I've ever seen this subject matter tackled in the way that it has been.
Oh, thank you.
Did you always know you wanted to be an author?
I think I was desperate to write, and that's all I've ever done. And, I remember not napping and would be like scribbling and writing and drawing, that kind of quite cliched thing when you talk to most writers, that sort of, just all they wanted was like a typewriter or a pen or a paper. But I never knew anyone who was an author. It was sort of like wanting to be a prima ballerina or a professional footballer. It didn't happen to people like me. Yeah. So I trained to be a journalist and was like a news journalist for a couple of years. Terrible job if you're an empathetic person. I did not cope very well with that job.
Right.
But then, I started writing a book when I was a news journalist, just as a way to kind of get away from all this horrible stuff that I was reporting on all day, every day. And just kind of...
A brilliant way to escape.
It was, it was a romantasy as well. So it was so far removed from crime and horrible things happening to people, which is what news is. News is normally talking to people on the worst day of their lives every day. And so, but I never thought it would come to anything. And then I managed to get an agent and a book deal, and I was like, what's happening? And it's just gradually become my job, and I still kind of feel like I'm in a Freaky Friday. So, it still doesn't seem real. I feel just so lucky, but also like I'm getting away with something, or like my luck's gonna run out, because it's like, who gets to write stories for a living?
Weirdly, my second book, I was like, oh my God, they're going to know it was such a fluke that I managed to do the first one. They're going to ask my advance back. I've already turned it into bookshelves. What am I going to do?
Yeah, no, that's me always. And I'm on like book 15 and it just doesn't go away.
I'm 13 and I'm just like, it's that thing. It's always that constant voice going, maybe you've done it. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
All the ideas, they've gone. Did you always know that you wanted to be a mum?
No. No, I didn't. And I think that's why I've been able to write the other characters in this book kind of in a way that, because I got my friend who's child-free to read it and be like, please say I've not, And so I didn't. I think I walked away from a relationship when I was 30, which seems so young now, but at the time I thought that was my chance. And because I think I saw how unhappy I would be if I had children with this person. And that's sort of, I think, where Nikki came from. I was like, what if I, And so I left that relationship knowing that might have been my shot for being a mum, and then kind of really wanted to be child-free for quite a long time, and found it very frustrating how people responded to me when I said that. And I do remember somebody saying, a friend who I loved who had just had a baby, and I was like, I'm just so fulfilled, especially with my job, because I do think there is something about producing books that sit on a bookshelf that will outlive you.
Yeah.
It is different, but it is a very nourishing job that does leave some sort of legacy or some part of yourself behind.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of saying, and my job's so fulfilling. And I remember her holding a baby going, it's not the same, and sort of wincing. And I was so angry at her for saying that. And that anger actually inspired my first adult novel, How Do You Like Me Now?
Right.
And I was like, screw you. But I really, and it was only when I met my husband that I was like, oh, it's not that I don't want a baby or I don't want to be a mum. It's like, I want his baby. You know, you're my person, and I can see us, and combining us together would be so wonderful.
Did you have a conversation about that? And did you say to him, until this point, I've not really wanted to have children?
Yeah, we did. I think it's like, because I was 31 when we met, and I think when you meet a little bit later, you have to get it out quite quickly, don't you? Because you don't. And so we were like, well, let's see how it goes, but he kind of did, and I wasn't against it. But I remember quite within a few dates just thinking, you'd be an amazing father, and also not just you'd be an amazing father. I think the most important thing is you'd be an amazing partner if I have a child with you.
Yeah.
And I remember my agent once, when I didn't know whether to leave a relationship, she went, imagine you've just had the worst birth of your entire life, and you're completely traumatized, and they just chuck you a baby before you're about to go into, who do you want by your side? Who do you want right there? That's the only thing that matters when you're looking for a life partner that you've just shot yourself. And it's, he would be, amazing, because it's gritty and hard, pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, motherhood. You really need someone there. And I think I was like, wow, he would be amazing. And he was. And then, sort of similar to Charlotte, I got diagnosed with endometriosis.
Right.
And I had this very, very large, very painful cyst on my ovary and needed sort of surgical removing. And we were confronting, we might not be able to have children.
When you did decide that you wanted to have children, was that a bit of were you worried that you were going to be able to get pregnant?
We were. So we spent our wedding fund getting mother surgery done, because it was in 2020.
Right.
And my pain was so bad I couldn't walk. It was properly.
Had you not had that your whole life? Had it just suddenly flared up?
It was, this is my endometriosis story is how long do you have? But I had quite bad symptoms since I was 16, and just gone to the doctor, and which is quite typical with the disease, just been disregarded. I even had surgery to check if I had endometriosis when I was 24.
Which is the only way that they can check if you've got it.
And they said, you don't have it.
Wow.
And then things got worse and worse. And
which must have left you in limbo as well. If you're told that you don't have something, but you've still got this pain and no understanding of why.
On my way to work and losing so much blood, I would pass out. It was just awful. And I was like, well, it's not endometriosis. And it's only when, it was in 2020, so between one of the lockdowns, I remember it was summer, we almost called an ambulance because I was in so much pain, and managed to get an emergency GP appointment. And when you're got a mask on, and I was like, oh God, I hope I'm not wasting anyone's time. I mean, I almost think I'm dying, but and I remember the doctor just prodded me to check it wasn't endometriosis, and went, no, it's just an inflamed ovary. And my friend was like, you've got to get a second opinion. And I remember just paying to go to Harley Street, because that's what you do. That's the words when you're want to just, how do I see? And she got a scan booked straight away. And I remember cycling there because I was too scared to get the tube in case I caught COVID. Mm-hmm. And she was like, put me in a scan straight away. And there was this massive Satsuma-sized cyst on my ovary. And she was like, yeah, this happens a lot. They didn't look properly when they did the surgery. I mean, it's to do with such misunderstanding about this disease, and which is a huge issue that I really hope is changing. Mm-hmm. She was like, you need endometriosis specialists doing this surgery because you have to look properly, you have to look effectively. But it did mean we had this massive cyst, and they said, you won't be able to have a baby with this on your ovary, and it'd be quite dangerous to have a pregnancy with this giant, it could rupture. And so, we basically emptied our wedding savings account to get private surgery to get the cyst removed. Right. I mean, not just because we wanted to have children,
but you've got a massive cyst
I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
The waiting list on the NHS was like 18 months at this point.
Especially at that time, yeah.
And so, yes, I had the surgery and it was successful. And what's so amazing about private surgery is she's like, I'm like the 7th best in the country for removing cysts. I'm going to put you to number 1. Like this guy who's just all he does is just like clip off cysts like it's nothing. Like I write an email who's just like, so he did this incredible job, and it was actually the best money we've ever spent because my baby came from that ovary. We saw it at the 12-week scan. You can see where the follicle has been or something.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we got married in like this very cobwebby, dusty hall where we were like frantically hoovering the night before and, did a very cheap wedding. But that surgery meant that I was able to conceive and have my babies, which is, so I'll get emotional. So it was, we were very lucky. And if we hadn't drained our wedding account or even had that money to begin with, then my daughter wouldn't exist, or we might have really struggled. But we did have to try to get pregnant quite quickly after the surgery.
Does it make you almost more fertile in that period, or is it literally just in case you...
It's just the risk that the endometriosis tissue will come back and then kind of damage the quality of the ovary and stuff.
So that's a lot of stuff to happen in a very short space of time.
It was an intense couple of years, yeah.
So can you remember where you were when you thought maybe I should do a test? What was your symptoms to make you test in the first place to see if you were pregnant?
So I'm a very type A person. So
what is a type A person?
I don't even know what that is actually. Just heard other people say, maybe I'm not type A. Type A people will probably know what that means.
Look, you're an author. You write it down, then you Google it after. It's fine.
I think it's quite...
On it. Okay.
And I remember thinking, it's unlikely we'll be able to conceive easily because I have endometriosis and because I was 34 at that time and I'd seen so many other people struggle. So I was like, let's maximise these chances. So I got the digital blue clear something or other and it had a happy face and said, go for it. And so we timed it. And I remember saying, I do think we want children, but let's start trying and that will help us just think how we feel.
Yeah.
Because if we start getting lots, months and months go by, that will really help us decide if we want to go down the IVF route. And because I'm maybe a typo, I don't know if that is actually right. I was Googling what IVF is like and how much it would cost and we'd need to start saving. And I think because I had just had this surgery, I did get pregnant on the first try, which I know is very, very, very lucky. Yeah. And I'm very, very grateful. And it was also just completely unexpected. Yeah. But I did take a test the day that my period was due because that's the sort of person that I'm like.
Did you feel no symptoms? You were just like, let's just see.
I remember saying to my husband, I can smell ingredients in my night cream. Really, it was really odd. I was like, there's cocoa butter in this. And I checked the ingredient list. And this was like 2 weeks pregnant. It might have just been me making up a story. And I was like, let's do a test. And and it came up. And it had not occurred to us because of everything that we had been through that we would get pregnant straight away. So it was quite a shock. I don't think I've ever been more shocked in my real life. And my husband I remember, he's going to hate me saying this, the first words that came out of his mouth was, we can't have a baby, we don't have a TV stand.
Pure shock.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, our telly's been on the floor for a year and a half. Adults, proper grown-ups have their TV on a stand. We can't have a baby. And he just spent the whole day on Facebook Marketplace trying to find and source a TV stand. It was just the transference was so...
Yeah.
So huge. And we did get a TV stand by the end of the day. And he was like,
nice and productive.
Yeah, and he put the TV on the stand and was like, okay, we can be parents. The TV is at an adequate height. So we were very shocked.
Yeah.
It was very odd.
And did it slowly those symptoms start coming?
Yes, I remember I got very bad sickness at week 7.
Right.
And it was on our honeymoon that it hit. And so our honeymoon it was awful. It was like the worst 2 weeks ever. We went to Sicily, and they had the worst hurricane that's hit Sicily in 40 years.
Wow.
There was water pouring down the streets, like people trying to get out of their cars. God. We were just holed up in this like little posh hotel, but it was like, it's not safe to leave.
Yeah.
And I was just gripping the toilet, just dry heaving for 2 weeks.
It didn't really matter what was going on around you. You weren't going to enjoy it anyway.
But I did just feel so lucky. Yeah. I'm not trying to put a toxic spin on it. It was horrific. Yeah. And I still feel like I'm owed a honeymoon. And my sickness lasted to week 20. I was really unlucky in that way. But I do know I was so lucky to get pregnant. It's that weird thing, isn't it? When you talk about motherhood, these are my positives and here's my negatives. And it's so hard to you feel like you can't complain about something that was hard.
You have to caveat it. But I love my baby.
Yeah.
But I'm so lucky. But I'm so grateful.
I just feel like a million different heads just talking to you, going, I don't want that person to get upset because I got pregnant straight away and they've also got endometriosis. It's that, and that's sort of where I think the book came from. Is just like, how do we hold space for all of these different, quite hard and challenging and beautiful experiences as well? Because motherhood can be amazing. Yeah. But then you also don't want to rub it in other people's faces. It's just, you're always like silencing.
Yeah, always. How was the rest of your pregnancy? Especially once the 20-week mark and your sickness kind of lifted.
That was amazing.
Was it?
Yeah.
What was that like? Was it like a sudden kind of like waking up and like, oh, I don't feel...
It gradually, I was like, I can walk past broccoli again in the supermarket without like hurting my stomach. I remember just kale, broccoli, I couldn't be near it.
And how did you feel heading towards the birth? Were you someone who did loads of hypnobirthing? Did you do loads of research into what you wanted?
It was... I remember I went to some weird places deciding my birth journey.
Really?
So I remember I read Hamnet. Have you read it?
No.
By Maggie O'Farrell. It's an incredible book about Shakespeare and Shakespeare's wife. And she basically goes into the woods to give birth. Yeah. And she's like this really cool character. And then I think I must have talked about that and my phone listened to me. You know how they say that phones don't listen to you, but they do. Because then I just started getting like free birth Instagram accounts coming up and then you're like, your body, you shouldn't be in a hospital. And I just remember turning to my husband going, I think I can give birth in the woods. He was like, oh. Really? And I'm like, one day I'm just not going to be here and I'll be in the woods and I'll come back with the baby. And he was like, do you really think? I know, I want to support your choice. And he was like, what other ways do you think about giving birth? I was like, I think I either want to give birth in the woods or have an elective C-section.
It's the opposite. No intervention whatsoever. Yeah. Just help me.
Yeah. And he was like, It's just like, how do we... He was like, those is two interesting choices that don't have a lot in common with each other. And I think because I'd had these surgeries, I'd also had a very unpleasant thing happen to me in my 20s and I had post-traumatic stress disorder as a result and I'm kind of better. But I did feel I can't really have anything else go wrong with this part of my body, which I think I was either like run away to the woods or have the safest possible medical thing. It kind of made sense.
Like a controlled environment.
Or just nobody near me. Yeah. And so, and because of my medical history, I got lots of extra support from the NHS. And it made me sad that I needed this history to get that support because I had literally multiple meetings about what birth would make you feel safe. And I just felt like every woman should have had the meetings that I had. And we basically came to the conclusion that my fear of having a bad birth and how that might really undo a lot of work that I have done on myself would potentially hinder the sort of good feel-good hormones you need to make a birth go more smoothly.
Yeah. It's hard as well, isn't it? Not knowing what might be triggered in those moments. What could you sail through and what actually might become problematic in that moment?
And I also was aware that I likely only wanted one child, which was something to bear in mind. And so we did come to a conclusion that a planned C-section was the safest way for me to give birth. Yeah. And it was a huge decision. I changed my mind so many times.
Really?
It's so strange that you spend so much time when you're pregnant thinking about the birth, the birth, and you have no thought towards like breastfeeding or sleep or all the sorts of things. But I did decide on elective C-section, which was amazing. And I had such a positive birth experience.
Well, how did you feel leaving to go to the hospital?
I mean, I was convinced I would die, but I'm like that a lot. And I had surgeries before, but not when you're fully conscious. It seems slightly, I was just, and I remember as I got bigger and bigger, you are just looking down at this thing going, you have to come out of my body somehow. We're past the point of no return. And it is quite daunting. But I remember thinking, this is the best choice, and also I can change my mind. And they were just like, at any point you can change your mind. I had such incredible care. I was lucky that I had such incredible care, and that makes me really angry, because I've had lots of my friends who have had care that's not okay, and really had to do a lot of work afterwards to recover both like mentally and physically from their births. But I felt like this is the right decision for me. Yeah. And I do remember talking about it with my obstetrician, where we're talking about all these like really important things about like my history of endometriosis and not wanting my PTSD to trigger. And I was just like, but what does it mean that I'm choosing my baby's star sign? And I was just like, because her birth chart, like, if I'm deciding what her like rising moon sign, I was just like, the NHS is under quite a lot of stress, so we can't entertain this conversation.
What star sign did you go for?
I think it was always going to be a Gemini. Just worries me. But I was like, but the actual chart, it's like the moment it all kind of it falls on that, and then
the time and everything
on the time, and then I Googled it, which was a massive mistake, because half the internet says one thing, which was like your baby's gonna be cosmically disorientated for the rest of their entire life, and then the other half was like, no matter what time any baby enters in the world, no matter what route, that's the time they're supposed to arrive. And I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this side of the internet today, because that validates my life choices. It's just how all the internet works. Yeah. But I don't have much memories. I look at the pictures of the C-section, I'm like, oh, that is me. Yeah. And I vaguely remember being there, but it's a hugely disorientating experience giving birth. And I think you always think about it. But I remember just being like, I look just quite dead behind the eyes, because I think I was just so overwhelmed by what's going on. And of course the baby's out and on you, but you're still, like, your intestines are like, wow, a ceiling. And you're still being stitched. I remember it just being very intense. Yeah. And I think my body was just like, you don't need to fully be here right now, Yeah. So I look at the pictures and I feel a bit like, oh, that was odd.
Do you remember seeing your baby for the first time?
Yeah. I remember she looked just like my mother-in-law. And she's a gorgeous Italian woman, but I remember being like, whoa. Like, and apparently this is really common if you have girls. They look like the dad's mum. It's like nature's paternity test. Because I Googled that. But so I remember going, wow, this is Viv as a baby. Hi, Viv, if you want to think. And it's just like, but yeah, and I also like when they lift you up, she kind of came out like Christ on the cross. They kind of quite spread eagled. It was, and you're always waiting for the cry, aren't you? Because that's when you know everything's okay. And she cried and all was safe. But again, it's all very blurry. Mm-hmm. I don't, like some people say I have this huge rush of love, or I think I just had this huge sense of relief that I was alive, that she was alive, but this is quite a lot to be getting on with. And I did love my daughter instantly. I didn't struggle to bond with her, but I was very overwhelmed for about a year and a half. Yeah. And I feel like I have metabolized.
Well, and even though you had a really great birth, one thing that you have spoken about before is that part of life in your child's early life where you're in hospital, you've just had major surgery, the person that you arrived with is now no longer allowed to be there.
Insane.
And yet you're told to rest, but you've still got to get up, pick up your baby to feed them, change them. You've still got to do all of that stuff, even though you've just had major surgery.
It's deranged. It's awful. And I've spoken to other mothers in different trusts who was allowed to have their partner there. Right. And they're like, what? When I'm like, no, he had to go home. And my baby was crying, and I had literally, as I said, my intestines had seen a ceiling like 2 hours before, and I couldn't get out of bed and I couldn't reach my child. And you're also trying to learn how to breastfeed.
Yeah.
It was just, I remember my birth was a very positive experience. The 2 days in hospital afterwards, I feel very angry about.
Really?
And I've spoken to so many other mums who feel like deep rage, and I've heard stories about stuff. I think this rage makes it into the book with Lauren. I kind of, I remember one of my friends was really struggling in the ward, and somebody told her to shut her baby up. It was a man, like one of the other dads. It was just try and shut your baby up. I was like, what is the ultimate male entitlement to be in a maternity ward of new mothers and tell a new mum because it's too noisy for you? But yeah, the fact that my birth went really well, I did have that positive experience, but I wanted to get out of the hospital so much because I was just like, I need my husband here. I need painkillers, and you're just hitting this button, and the NHS is under so much strain, and every midwife that I came across was incredible and wonderful, but did not have the time or the space.
Whereas if you had a person there with you who was able to dedicate their time to making sure you're okay, making sure the baby's okay, that would change things massively.
Yeah, just bring the baby to my boob because I can't get out of bed and they're crying. It was just that, and that was hard. It
goes back to, as well, what we were saying earlier about so much thought is put on the baby arriving. And that initial bit is so hard, but we don't give it any thought beyond packing our hospital bag and going, I'll pack that just in case.
No. It's like, it's tricky because you don't want to jump down the throat of a pregnant woman and be like, this is what you need to do. And people did give me this advice, and I'm like, well, it's really hard being pregnant, and I'm very preoccupied with my birth. But I remember people kind of going, it's really useful to understand breastfeeding before you're trying to breastfeed. Just have a basic concept grasp of how it works, what's going on, whether or not you even want to do it. And sleep as well, and babies sleep. I just feel like, because the moment that baby comes out of your body, feeding and sleeping will be all you think about. It's your obsession for at least 6 months. I've kind of spoken quite intensively about how my baby didn't sleep.
Well, let's go to the tweet then. So the tweet that you posted that went viral was, okay, so what happens when the sleep consultant refunds you after 2 days saying they're totally baffled by your baby?
It went viral. I wasn't even trying to be funny. That was a genuine, what do you do?
Well, because also at that point, we know how difficult not sleeping, we know how awful that is. And then to hire someone in who's going to make everything better, and for them to go, no, actually, cope with it for a bit, and then we'll come back in a few months and once they're over this stage, and then we can focus on it again. That's literally leaving someone when they're in the trenches, that feeling of sleep deprivation and you put it somewhere else as well, that thing of no one, it was a post that you've written that no one tells you that when you're feeding if you're exclusively breastfeeding your baby, and that's the choice that you've made, that you then you might only get 19-minute windows of sleep. My first, he would get up, I'd feed him. Feeding would take forever because it didn't come naturally to either of us. It'd take us 45 minutes to go back to sleep. So that was an hour and a half. Then I'd have to wake him up an hour and a half after that to start the feed again. So you're getting 90-minute windows throughout the night. You're on your own. You're absolutely fucking shattered. And no one tells you that.
I heard, because I used to work for a charity that's specialised in mental health, and so I'd been reading lots about attachment parenting and all this sort of stuff. I was really nervous of any sleep training or any non-responsive. And I didn't realise, and I didn't find it, because obviously I had no spare time with my job. By the time I contacted the sleep consultant, I think my baby was 5 months old. I'd not slept for more than 3 hours.
And she was her nap times in the day were 30 minutes on the dot.
Yes.
Same as mine. Yeah.
And she would only nap whilst fully attached to my breast, sucking. And she'd kind of, if I wanted, and so I had no day or night. I had no, it's Tuesday, now it's Wednesday, now it's Thursday. It would be, she needs to nap. I would have to just go and sit in the dark upstairs whilst her fully attached to my breath. And I was writing this book while that happened. I don't know how I managed it. And then come down. And then the only time she would sleep maybe for more than 3 hours was between like 8 and half 11.
Right.
Is that you get your big sleep. And so we'd put her down at 8. And I'd be like, well, I have to go to sleep. You have to chase the sleep. You chase the sleep. So I'd be in bed by 8:30, and then she'd wake at 11, and I'd have to breastfeed her back, and then wait till she was fully asleep, put my finger in her mouth, pretend it was a nipple for another 20 minutes, wait until she's in a deep sleep, try and put her back into the cot like you're diffusing a bomb. Yeah. Like walk away. Sometimes she'd wake up, and I'd have to start all over again. Yeah. And I was so ill. Mentally, like I don't mind saying that. And sometimes she would wake up and I was gone, and I would just like have to go and scream into a pillow in the other room, and my husband would have to get her, and he'd be like, my wife is screaming, and it was because
I think so many people hearing that will absolutely relate to it, because it makes me want to cry, because I know that. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely know that feeling of complete and utter despair and frustration. But this is a beautiful little human that you absolutely love. But fuck me, I'm depleted.
And I was just so. And I just had no time, and I was trying to work, which is insane. Like, as I said, when you're like, I like this book, I'm like, this book?
Maybe you can write something so raw when you're feeling so raw.
I think so, but I remember, and like what I like one of the things I like most about my personality, I don't like lots of myself, but I'm always able to find the funny story. I remember we realised we needed to get help when it was this time so we're recording this in December. So it's like the first week of September when I'm talking to you. Yeah. You'll make me cry.
Sorry.
And it is funny. It was not funny at the time, but Santa Claus came to our road. And I don't know if this happens where you live, but there's like the local Rotary Club. Now I think it happens all around the UK. Yeah. They get like a caravan and they deck it up with fairy lights, and they have a man dressed as Santa at the top, and they blare carols, and they come down the road. And like they come and ask for money for the Rotary Club. Yeah. It's usually a wonderful Christmas tradition. So that happened, and I had just spent an hour and 45 minutes getting my baby to sleep at night, and then you just heard silent, like blaring. And I was like, Santa's going to wake the baby. And I couldn't. I was like, it can't. I spent an hour and 45 minutes. I knew it would take another hour and 45 minutes till she wake up. And my husband was like, where are you going? And he said, I just left. I went running out into the street in my pyjamas and just stood in front of Santa Claus. Like Gandalf, like, you shall not pass. And I just went, Santa, no. And I was like, you cannot come down this road. My baby is just, and I was like crying. And they were like, whoa. And I was like, it's too loud. And I was like, it's 8:20. All of the kids are asleep anyway. Do you not understand, children? Like yelling at this poor man dressed as Santa. And he was like, I did. And I was like, no. And it was like the fierceness of me. And he just reversed. It was the lowest point, I think, of my parenting. I'm going to half cry, half laugh. Lowest point of my parenting journey is watching Santa Claus reverse a caravan out our road, just beep, 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 while I'm just standing there.
That energy, though, once he's gone, like, how did that feel? Like, in that moment, were you like...
I am insane.
Yeah.
I have stopped Santa Claus visiting my neighbours' children. I mean, it was 8:20. They were already asleep.
Yeah. What were they thinking?
Yeah. I'm like, no kid's up at 8:20. And that's when I was like, and my husband was like, he asked that question, he went, how do you feel about what's just happened? I was like, I don't feel great. I usually really like Christmas. I usually really like Santa. And I remember just like the shame. Like, we're laughing, but like, that's not the behaviour of a healthy person. Like, most people don't verbally abuse Santa Claus and the rest. And that's when we got the first sleep consultant.
Really?
Yeah, because we were like, again, I didn't have time to, and so we just got somebody that had been recommended. And they did, I have to say, it did work for a day. And I think this is what baffled the sleep consultant, is they taught us this thing, and it was a responsive things that, you know, we just kept going back in. And I remember the sleep consultant saying, your baby's amazing. because after a day she slept through. And we just were like, oh my God.
So quick. Yeah.
Within a day, you know, we put her down by that night because you start practicing on the naps, don't you? And I remember just weeping with happiness, like weeping. And then my child didn't do it again. Just wouldn't. It was just she did it once to prove she could.
I can, guys. I don't want to.
And she didn't. And that's when the woman was like, I don't understand. Like, I really don't understand. And like gave us some money back, which is really nice of them. They were completely professional and they've got these incredible reviews. It was just like, which made it worse. It's not like I'd found some, and that's where it was. I think I sent that tweet out of desperation. I was like, I literally don't know what to do. And then the tweet went viral. It was like, I think I said like over 1 million likes. And then I had every sleep consultant in the entire world get in touch to try and like take a crack at maybe. Gina Ford emailed me. You know?
No.
She emailed me herself to just be like, I not seen you. I don't know who you are. I don't know your baby, but I can tell you that you're not feeding your baby enough.
Really?
She was right. She's wise, Gina.
Yeah.
And it was just so strange because I was getting all these national newspapers asking me to write an article about it. Because people thought it was really quite funny. Oh, my baby's like... Remember some American TV news channel was like, we want you to fly over and have you do... And I was like, is this real?
I'm not sleeping.
I was so... I was like, am I hallucinating? It was so disorientating. But this one woman got in touch called Sarah Carpenter, who runs a Sleep Mums podcast. And it was just straight away from emails like, oh, I think...
It's interesting. I wonder what it was about her that made you kind of go, she's the one that I think I'll lean into.
I think part of the reason she has this podcast, because she's like, most people can't afford sleep consultants because they're hundreds of pounds. This information should be given to people, and that's why she has the podcast. Yeah. Because, you know, and also she understands podcasts. This is what's so amazing about your podcast as well. Podcast is one of the only things you kind of have as a mum. You're like pushing the thing around. Yeah. So this is how you can get the information. And she just seemed so calm, and she... Again, like, I've just got so many people's voices in my ears, so I just do not want to shame any parent, but I didn't want to do any form of crying it out. Yeah. And I don't have an opinion on whether it's good or bad, because I do think it's very nuanced. I do think having, like, a mentally unwell mother is very, very bad for a child. Yeah. And I do think that's something that you really need to consider when you talk about these things. Yeah. But Sarah Carpenter was like, you don't have to. There are other ways. Yeah. And love my life. She's a thanks to an acknowledgements of the book. She transformed my child's sleep within 2 weeks. She was amazing. And I wasn't feeding her enough. Because I thought, with weaning, they're like calories under one, adjust for fun. And Sarah was like, no.
But also, didn't Sarah put a camera in the nursery as well? So
she did.
I read an article that you wrote, your follow-up article, which was all about actually sleep isn't just about sleep. Yeah. And about what happens in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm. It's everything. It was like getting nap timings right. It's understanding that different babies have different sleep needs. And my child, quite clear, has very low sleep needs. So if I'm trying to get her to nap, she's not going to sleep at night. Yeah, she was, and it's hard having a low sleep needs baby. But now I knew that you can kind of game it a bit. And we weren't feeding her enough solids. She was constipated, and that can impact things. And the main thing that Sarah identified is like she does not feel fully safe in her cot. And so that's why she can't quite get herself back down. And so she taught us this incredible technique where you like rub their bottom and pat their back and rub their bottom and pat their back. And so when my daughter woke up and she went to send her husband in because she won't smell of milk, he went, and so she was just crying, like just completely, always there, always responding, not getting her up and breastfeeding her, which is what she wants, what she was used to. But Sarah was like, I can promise you she's had enough milk, she's had enough food, she's not hungry.
Taking out the night feeds almost, and then being consistent with just your husband going in.
Yeah, for the first couple of nights. Yeah. And again, my daughter wasn't happy about it because she was like, where's the nipple that I've just had in my mouth every time I've been unconscious since I was born? That was great. My mum keeps crying and is probably showing up in other ways. But you just always, and like if she was upset, we would get her out of a cot and calm her down, blah, 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 and put her back down. And within 3 nights, it was done. And my life changed. And I went from being someone who ticked almost every single box of having postpartum depression, and everyone was very worried about me, and I was screaming at Santa Claus in the street, to being the mum I wanted to be. And it makes me so sad that within 3 days you can become the mum you want to be, but you need to sleep. And there are ways of getting there that aren't, I wish I had known that there's a middle way. If you want that middle way.
There are two things that cause the most debates within the Happy Mum, Happy Baby community, or anyone that's talking within this field. They are breastfeeding and sleep. They're the two things that people get most divisive over.
And I don't want to upset anyone.
But no, what I'm saying is it's such a shame, because either of them, people are coming at it of a place of they're just doing what they think is right. And with sleep, people are just, there's a reason why we are all so tense about sleep. We know how much we need it. And I think when people are trying to offer their advice and do it in such a sort of direct way, do that. Like, I feel like it's because sometimes people have been through so much with their own children and found something that works for them, that they really want to just hone in on that person. But this. It doesn't mean that's going to work for your child.
No.
But it means that person, all it tells you is that person had a journey and that is what they've landed on. You know what I mean? I find it such a massive shame that people just get up in arms about those two topics, because actually if people could just reach out with understanding and kindness and realise that you've got a mum who's on her knees or a dad who's on his knees, and, all people need is that support rather than just anger.
And there's such a wide variety of things that you can try, from extinction mode or whatever it is to completely responsive until they're 7 years old, which people do. And I wish I could have been that mum. I wanted to be that mum. I tried, and it was not, and so I found my way. Yeah. And I had, and it did make things better. I am still quite broken about that experience. And whenever she has a bad night because she's sick, or whenever I hear any baby cry, I'm like, I go back to this moment of complete panic, and I'm like, it's going backwards. I'm not going to get sleep again. And I'm struggling to sleep through the night, and her sleep's been so much weird to not mostly been all right for quite a long time. And it's strange because, talking about this book, and this is a whodunit. Yeah. It's a very intricate plot. I had to have red herrings. I knew who'd started the fire, all this sort of stuff. I wrote all this when this was going on. And I've got pictures of myself writing it with one she's attached to my boob in the dark. And I know that I'd planned it really carefully and researched it all. I have no memory of writing this book.
Really?
I obviously wasn't getting any REM sleep. Yeah. You need to have a dream, don't you, to store memories. So it's just like this it's almost like a ghost-written novel. It's not, I wrote it. But I have no memory. It's so disorientating publicising this book, because I'm like, I know I can look at my plan and look at my research notes and know that
you definitely did.
I did do it. But I've got the pictures of me writing it, and I'm like, it's just there's nothing there because I was so sleep deprived. Like when you said it's good, I'm like, oh my god, thank you.
One thing we were talking about earlier is your Google history. You have your Google history from the first 3 months.
First 3 weeks.
First 3 weeks.
Yes. So I wrote a diary when I was pregnant, and I kept up my diary after I gave birth. But there's this 3-week gap, of course, where you couldn't do anything. And I felt really lost that I didn't have anything to remember that by. And then I remembered I was Googling a lot. So I went back and downloaded my Google history of the first 3 weeks. Do you want to? It's insane.
I want to hear it.
Sure?
Yeah,
it's
what
quite
is
long
on
there.
there?
Hang on, how much time? It's like
wow. Whoa!
It's crazy.
I mean, for the listener, this is a very long. This is scrolling.
I'll try go through it. Hang on. So the first thing I ever Googled for day one was, can I wear makeup to my C-section? Then it went to newborn, no eyelashes. Then, we've mentioned this. Why do babies look like their fathers at birth? Then swollen ankles after labour. Stomach still swollen after labour. Jaundice, day 2.
This is such a great way of like
It's amazing.
figuring out what was.
Yeah, jaundice, day 3. Newborn hiccups after feeding. What do I do if my baby hates being swaddled? What do babies wear at night? When do baby blues hit? Then my favourite, crying, day 3 postpartum. I think we know. Then can't get out of bed after C-section. When does milk come in? Higher medulla breast pump. Do you wake a newborn to feed? Can you breastfeed a hiccuping baby? How to wake a baby at breast? Signs milk coming in. Weather tomorrow.
And that's the great thing about that search history. You'll have such a massive thing of actually baby related, then you'll have something really random.
I know, it was crazy. My favourite is what to do with umbilical cord once it falls off, and then umbilical cord magic spell. I was like, am I supposed to do like a ritual with it? We were just holding it and we didn't know what to do with it for ages.
What did you do with it?
I think we lost it. It was in the house somewhere with like my old retainer that I also don't know where it is. But I was like, do we do something with this? Like,
I had my placenta was turned into capsules.
They didn't do that at our hospital. I checked.
So we paid someone to come in and they kind of take away the placenta and do it. But she had the umbilical cord and she turned it into it's like a dried heart. It's amazing. But Tom always tells me to chuck it out. It's like, why have you got it?
It's still in your house.
Totally. I can't chuck it away.
Yeah, I was like, it was just there. And then one day we're like, where did it go? Like, if we ever sell our house, like, new neighbours, like, what's this?
It does feel weirdly magical, though, because of what it did.
Yeah, it kept your baby alive for 9 months.
Yeah.
And it does have all these stem cells. It's like, there is these incredible scientific feat that you did. Like, growing placenta is insane. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. First trimester of pregnancy, you're just like, you're growing an organ. Yeah. And when it comes out afterwards, you're like, that isn't small.
No.
It's like octopus.
Absolutely massive.
Like a blobfish.
Yeah, literally.
Like I grew a blobfish.
No one tells you about the blobfish.
There's so much stuff people don't tell you.
Holly, if you could write a letter on being a mum, who would it be to? What would you say?
I would write it to early mum, Holly.
Okay.
Because I think one of the things that was also going on with all the sleeplessness and yelling at Santa that we've talked about and all the feeding and somehow writing a book is there was a deep sadness. And it's taken me a really long time to figure out what was going on. And that's saying, and so I would like to write a letter to myself in that first year.
Yeah.
Because they always say, don't they, when a baby is born, a mother is almost born. You've got to remember that that's really important. And I do think that's really important and not enough is given to the mum. But you've died. The person that you were up until is gone forever.
Yeah.
And there's a huge grief there. And I think so much of my struggle with the first years of motherhood, and of course there were amazing the caveats here are the caveats.
Yeah.
Like, I loved my daughter and we had these incredible moments through all the states of deprivation and stuff, but like I was going through the stages of grief. I realise that now, like denial, anger, all these sort of things, because I just realised my life forever was gone. The woman who used to get a train and look out the window, and or even I was talking to you before we started recording, like meeting you and being on this podcast is one of my massive career highs ever. And yet the moment I got the email inviting me on, my first thought wasn't it was like childcare.
Yeah.
Like, I've always got to think that, and
you can never just be now. There's so much else to take into account and consideration and so much more to do before simply doing.
Yeah, and there's still just this like radar that I feel just leaves this back signal. I'm sure you feel the same, that goes out kind of, you're just aware that your child's out there in the world somewhere and you're just kind of pinging out a ping. You're just this tether, this beautiful tether, because it's love and it's there's so much to be gained. Yeah. But there's a huge loss with that gain. I think if I was able to understand that I was grieving, even though I was grieving, but I was also falling in love with this incredible thing. Like, you do fall in love with your child. It's so wonderful, but like, it's so discombobulating to be doing that at the same time.
Yeah.
as losing yourself, and you're the mum now. You have to take care. You have to take care of someone now. Nobody's looking at, after you as much. That's a huge step up. And so, I think if I was able to frame it and understand it as grief, I would have understood myself a lot better and maybe had more self-compassion.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Holly, we end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences. Have you got notes here, Holly?
Yeah. I told you, type A, whatever that means.
The first one is being a mum means.
I've written truly understanding from an experiential level just what goes into building a human being. You just look at everyone, you're like, you were all a baby once.
Yeah.
It's
crazy, isn't it?
I love it. It's one of the most magical things I found about parenting is when you just look at everyone. Like, it's insane that we are all here. And I do think it's one of the reasons, like, we try so hard to limit women, because what we do is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's like anything that you see in the world from every great building and stuff is because they had a mum that grew them. Like, weird.
And then the next sentence is, since having a child, I...
It's a dark one.
Okay.
But I live in constant fear of their death or my death.
I mean, we're laughing, but I totally get it.
It's like, are they going to die, or am I going to die and leave them behind all day, every day? That is my worry.
Okay. And final sentence is, I'm happy when?
Honestly, when they just put their little arms around the back of your neck.
Oh.
It's just like, it is just like nothing. Or even just watching, because she's a toddler now. I remember just pushing her through the alleyway the other day, and she was running ahead and pushing her own little buggy. And I remember seeing an Instagram post about, like, when you're really struggling as a mum, think about when you're older, how much you're going to wish you could be in a time machine back to this very moment. And sometimes I catch myself. And that's when I'm at my most happy, when I'm like, you've travelled through time from when you're 56 and she's not called in 2 weeks. And you've arrived here and you're here. It's now that's when I'm really happy, when I'm able to realise, like, it's just it's so every day, isn't it? A kid puts their arms around the back of their mum's neck. It happens all day, every day. But when it's just, sublime.
Really beautiful. Holly, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, for anyone listening, so the book is called So Thrilled for You, and Holly might not remember writing it, but she absolutely did, and it is honestly one of the best books I've ever read.
Oh, so, thank you.
You might not remember it, but maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's just meant to just kind of be in the world.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will help people. And also just give you something to do whilst breastfeeding at 2:00 in the morning.
Read about arson. Thank you.
Thank you so much.